one who is known to bring analytical rigor and narrative depth, one who makes the teaching of history analytical, intuitive, and most importantly, scoring. Hello, sir. Welcome to our podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for arranging this. It will be very interesting to discuss about the optional.
Sir, when we are looking towards history today and we are going to establish in and out corners of history optional today, one very interesting thing that I came across that you are from engineering background. And how did you turn towards this whole world of history? That would be an interesting insight to know and a starting point for us for today's discussion. So that is something we would like to know today.
I was always interested in reading history books right from my school days. Even in my college, while doing engineering, I had read a number of books on Indian history and world history. And while taking the decision to prepare for civil services examination, it was quite natural for me that my interest was in history, having read a number of good books, and some of these books are also prescribed for preparation.
Correct.
So that interest was always there.
Right.
Engineering, yes, engineering helps you to analyze it to in a way that you start deriving dimensions from it. You are not only focused on narrative, you try to break up any topic into say 4 or 5 dimensions, so that helps in answer writing also. So that was something that I can say. Otherwise the natural inclination was always, I think, from class 8th 9th
Wow.
for history. Yes.
Sir, when we are talking about optional and we will be gradually moving towards history itself, but we have an established understanding that optional is something that helps you not just get through mains, but also get your ranks and where you land up in terms of the whole range. This is where a lot of freshers, beginners have a lot of problem in deciding which optional. So, do you think there are certain parameters that they should keep specifically in mind, evaluate based on them to move towards their optional, deciding their optional? And when we are looking at this, if you had to introduce amidst this history in between those parameters as an optional, how would you go about that?
Certainly, when we have to decide an optional, deciding an optional is a very important decision because you are going to spend the next 6 7 months for preparation in that. And for that, to maintain that, you need a lot of interest in the subject.
Right.
And then, so it can happen that a subject which you have done, graduation, and you are naturally inclined, it becomes easy. Many of our history optional students are from the background, but also take my case, who is not from history optional, but chose to prepare, and then I'm teaching also, was because of the interest and was able to read in between the lines.
Right.
So I would suggest that every student, before you decide to take an optional, based on whatever you have read in your GS, and through that you can understand, not go by market trend or what your friends or anybody is saying. If you have done graduation or post graduation, and definitely if you have done post graduation, your interest lies there, so you should go by the first parameter is interest. Second, guidance is important.
Right.
Why guidance? Because unlike GS, in every optional you are required to explore a topic with certain depth, and then also to write a multi-dimensional answer. For example, a student of history must also understand the social dimensions of any event, must understand the psychological dimension of any event, must understand the interlinkages between Indian history and world history. So sometimes, because of the limited time you have, because in this preparation you have to read a lot apart from optional GS, current affairs, optional ethics essay. So in that case, a good guidance is important because it will help you to focus on what is important and what has to be mentioned in answer writing and what is the type of questions. So I think these two things are there. In the recent times, I don't think there is a problem of resources.
Okay.
So resources are available for most of the good optionals around. So I think these two things are more important.
And when we are looking at history optional from the perspective of a beginner, how would you like to describe history optional?
History optional, I always say that there are multiple dimensions of history optional. One is the story part that I call as the narrative or the context.
Right.
So history is a subject of story, and all of us love story. From our childhood, we used to listen stories from my grandparents. Today also, whenever anything happens, for example, the current crisis in West Asia, or any dispute that is happening over a religious shrine, or even a social issue, has a historical background. So all of us, whether you prepare or not, we consume a lot of story on a everyday basis. But that is not history optional only about. You start with the story, you understand the events, the context, the narrative, but then to prepare optional, you must move to the dimensions. For everything, there are multiple dimensions: political dimension, social, economic, psychological, religious, interlinkages are there. And then the third part of history optional is interpretation, what we call as historiography.
Right.
So, I would say that if you want to prepare history optional, you should not be overwhelmed or too focused with the first part. You must understand the story and then move to the second and the third.
Right.
That is very, very important. Then you should not just be obsessed with the facts, but you must understand that, okay, what do I draw from it?
Absolutely, makes sense. So we were just discussing, and you mentioned something about that students should go by interest rather than market trends and labels, what is being said about. So I came across while the research, there are two certain labels which are associated with history specifically. That is that it is low scoring and it is also vast. So, for a beginner who is already flooded with a lot of information about so many optionals, how would you like to tell them, like clarify or reinstate the label? What is the reality of these labels, or they are just random things that are being just said about this optional?
There is a mathematical aspect to it. I would start with that.
Okay.
First of all, when you say that an optional is low scoring or high scoring, you must see that how many students appeared with that optional in mains and what was their average score.
Correct.
For example, there may be fewer number of students who appear with mathematics, but their marks are very high. They get in excess of 300.
Right.
But still, students don't see mathematics as a scoring optional until they have an interest in that. It is very good optional.
Right.
So for any optional, whether it is history, geography, pol science, anthropology, you must first try to understand that how many students appeared, and then the students who cleared, what is their marks. So this year also, for example, our student Diksha, she got 279. Somebody got around 299 marks, 300. So this is very good score. Anything above 275 is a good score. And above that, I would say there is an element of luck also. So history optional is not low scoring by any standards. In fact, all the good optionals are well scoring if you are able to meet the demand of the examination and the question and complete the paper on time. So there is nothing like that any optional is more rewarding and any other optional is not. Second aspect about the vastness of the syllabus, which is a genuine concern, and we must understand that why the optional is vast, and if it is vast, how can it be managed.
Right.
So as I said already, that yes, history optional is vast because one way of understanding any historical event is to know everything about the background, means the story aspect, the events. But then UPSC does not expect you to remember all that event. You must know but not remember. So if you try to memorize, if you try to master the story or the narrative, then it becomes vast. But if you prepare the narrative and then move to the dimensions and interpretation, then it is not vast. In fact, this year, students who got selected, all the toppers also mentioned that first they read for 6 months, self-study or classroom, and then they spend the next 2.5 months to consolidate the entire optional into, say, there are 4 sections. So every section can be consolidated in 50 to 60 pages. So at the end, you are actually reading 240 pages only. So it is not vast in that way, but yes, because we cover a lot of historical background, we do a lot of story into it, so that makes it fast. But that is easy also, because that is palatable also. That before you move to the analysis, before you move to historiography, you know the every aspect of it, so you will remember the story also. So this part is something that students miss out. They are most bothered with the narrative portion. They try to memorize the story and they do not move to the second and third dimension. That's the problem.
Right. Fairly said, sir. it makes it sound like that we have to have the proper information first to decide, and I think this would be something nice to hear for the students who are deciding towards it. Sir, another thing, once we are looking at optional, we also have to understand that every student is not coming from the same background. They are coming from different backgrounds and different life challenges, some of them working, some of them handling college at the same time. So, is there any criteria that you think this particular type of student should go for history optional, not just limited to lifestyle or whatever they are doing in life, but what are the parameters they should consider? Like, these are the kind of student they should consider, and these should let it be. Do you think there's anything like that?
Particularly, I would say there are two, three aspects which makes an aspirant more likely to choose history as an optional. One is the language part, because
Okay.
it is a humanities subject, and apart from classes, you will be reading a lot of books, if not books, then notes, and you have to understand the language. So you need to have a decent command over the language.
Correct.
Second, you need patience. As I said that before you move to the answer writing part, you have to first read the 4 sections. You need, in fact, this examination itself requires a lot of patience. So it is not a optional which you can say you prepare in 3.5 months and then you begin to write answers. Something, it is an optional which goes gradually. You take
Right.
4 months, 4.5, 5 months to first read everything. Then you take 2 months to consolidate. But the good part about this optional is that it is very predictable. Once you are prepared, then the uncertainty goes away.
Correct.
Most of the questions which are asked are from the prepared areas. Once you have covered the width, the dimension of it, then you can be rest assured that you will be getting a good marks. So that is the good part. You have to
Right.
put in some effort. You have to undergo that process. You have to think, and then you start enjoying also. The good part about history optional is that you study history, but then you have a political thought, social thought, religious thought, psychological thought. So you can use it everywhere in your life also.
Okay. So, based on that, can we assume a fresher who does not have history background is also welcome and will excel in the history optional based on your experience also, what you said? Is that right?
Sure. In fact, I believe that a fresher is more likely to excel in the UPSC way of history optional,
Okay.
because a fresher would not go too much into depth. Sometimes we have seen that students who are from humanities history background, because they have studied a lot, so they fail to differentiate between their graduation approach and here.
Right.
But in fact, for people who are from non-history background, whatever we guide them, instruct them, they follow that approach, they follow limited resources, and they come out with flying colors. We have seen every year students from non-history background also doing very well in this subject.
Okay. My next question was about challenges, but across these questions that I've already asked, I think challenges and some solutions have also been highlighted. So I would move to a part where a fresher is deciding. He also has another thing in consideration. He just doesn't want to know about the optional. He's also comparing at the same time. So when we are looking at history, two other subjects, geography and also political science, stand in the similar lane because of the timeline. So, how is history different from that? And what are the things that, again, a fresher should keep in mind when they are trying to differentiate? Because they don't just compare in terms of timeline, because there are similar timelines around it. They also take into the fact that geography has more of a science like side to it. And when we are looking at PSIR, the coverage, so this is the place we would also want to know about history and overlap with GS, if there is any, how much is there, and also a comparative lens to with respect to these two subjects.
So I'll start with the first question: history versus geography, history versus political science.
Right.
Uh, yes, for geography, there is a lot of science into it. When you study climatology, oceanography,
Correct.
there is a lot of science. You try to understand the natural phenomena, and once you have cracked it, then you move into the other aspects of human geography. So overlap of history and geography is less, although there are questions, and geography also has a important dimension in history. For example, we associate historical changes based on changing geographical parameters.
Yes.
In fact, we start with our ancient Indian history with geographical determinism. In world history, I often quote Robert Kaplan, Tim Marshall, who have tried to understand international relations from the geographical perspective. But syllabus wise, I would say that there is not much overlap between geography and history. Each of these optional require a different approach. Political science and history has a lot of overlap, especially in paper 2.
Okay.
Paper 2, Indian national movement and world history. And then you study in political science also Indian national movement, and you do a lot of political theories based on the historical developments in Europe from say Renaissance onwards. So there is a lot of interconnection. In fact, I teach world history, but then I can fairly relate to many things that happen in international relations. And similarly for the IR faculty or political science faculty also, they have a good command over history. So the overlap in these two subjects is pretty high in paper 2, I would say. See, whether you take history optional or not, you have to read all the 4 sections for your GS.
Correct.
Indian history for prelims and mains, and world history and post-independence for mains also. So I always say that definitely this should not be the criteria for choosing history optional, but obviously it is an advantage that if you take history optional, you don't have to prepare history for GS.
Right.
So anybody who is from non-history optional background prepares history GS for 3 months. So that is what I say, that we don't want to get into mathematical calculation, but effectively you are giving only 3.5 months more for your optional. Whatever you're reading in GS, you cover that in more detail in your optional. Anyways, in GS you are going to read ancient India, medieval India, early medieval India, world history, everything. Here also you are going to do that, but with more dimensions and more interpretation. So overlap is huge.
Right.
It is huge, and that is one of the reason why over these years, despite some concerns, students have been picking up history optional, because when they start reading it, they can relate to it, they find it very easier to comprehend, and then the aspect of answer writing comes into picture later on.
So now that you've just mentioned answer writing, I'll pick it up from there only. This was about students who are trying to decide and who are just entered towards UPSC. But a certain section of students who have completed their foundation or they're already studying history, what should the roadmap be like for them? Answer writing is one component, and you did talk about covering the content and then gradually moving towards analytics and then answer writing. So, what should be the full final blueprint they should be looking at for a person who has completed history optional foundation or is doing it so? And also within this, a more detailed view on answer writing. How should they take up answer writing for optional?
If we look at the nature of questions being asked in UPSC over the last 7 years, I would say that the nature of questions have changed. And that is why our approach for answer writing also needs to change according to the current pattern.
Correct.
PYQ remains the gold dust. You must always, now it is not practically possible and not required to do all the PYQs, but once you start answer writing, first thing you must list down, you must select all the PYQs, especially those who have been asked, which from where questions are the themes from where it has been asked more.
Correct.
And start practicing that.
Okay.
So I can assure you that if you write your PYQs, you get it evaluated, you get feedback, then 70% of your preparation is done there only. In fact, many a times students just write PYQs, they attempt PYQs between mains and prelims and mains. They don't do anything like that. But apart from that, there is also a degree of uncertainty on the micro themes. So I suggest students that first prepare the PYQs, start writing the PYQs, get evaluated. It is very, very important that not only you write, but you must get evaluation also. You must get feedback also. Because generally when students start writing answer, they start writing the story. There is more narration into it. So people must understand that answers must be argumentative, multidimensional, and wherever required, historiography has to be incorporated, not excess of it. You are not a history scholar here who is required to mention all the historians, and it is very difficult also to memorize. So all these things you learn while you start writing the PYQ. Apart from that, I believe that everybody before they write their mains examination must attempt at least 8 to 10 full length tests.
Okay.
So in fact, in Vajiram also, we have the mains test series program. And then we also encourage students to do PYQs. Apart from that, there is another section of answer writing, which is mapping. In paper one, the mapping, 50 marks is very important. It can make and break your paper one. So that is something that you should prepare on a daily basis. It is just like doing Sudoku or a crossword. You cannot prepare map by memorizing the sites. You have to prepare map by first picking up a standard source. Here Praveen Dikshit sir does very well. You can pick up his source and start practicing it on a daily basis, half an hour, so that by the time you are writing your mains, you already are in the habit of identifying it. So I think that these are the few things you must focus on in the 3 months once you have done. Even if you are not attempting the mains, I strongly recommend everybody who has completed the optional foundation, in whatever way, you should consolidate and write for the next 3 months.
Right. So when we were talking about this, you mentioned about memorizing when you were talking about mapping part. History optional has a lot of, apart from narrative, a lot of facts, mapping, and this is also involved. So what is your solution to the students who are thinking that they would have to mug up a lot, and even the narratives that they have to like rot it up? So how do they deal that? How to work on the memorization, how it can be done in easier way? Because one thing you pointed out, giving like small time every day can give you huge results later.
Yes.
So this is something that will definitely, I think, work for them. But overall, for memorization, what should be the way to go, especially for reference to, especially with reference to history optional?
Again, as I said that you must first reading when you do or in the class, you must first try to understand the larger picture. For
Right.
example, I'll give you an example. You are preparing French Revolution. Now, there are so many things that have happened from the beginning of the French Revolution on 5th May 1789 to the rise of Napoleon. So many things. In fact, every good book has mentioned, there is a movie also made. And that is interesting initially, but that is not required. So you must first start any chapter once you have read by asking questions to yourself, why that happened? What is the significance? What are the key takeaways? How did it impact in Europe, if you are preparing Europe revolution, or in India, for example, the advent of Gandhi? So how did the advent of Gandhi change the dynamics of Indian politics? Why was he so relevant? Why was he able to unite with everybody? So these are some common sense questions. We must understand that UPSC expects us to incorporate the historical ideas possibly years later in our administration, so that we remember what are the key takeaways. Why Ashok remains a symbol of cosmopolitanism. So then you try to analyze, understand that, okay, this is Dhamma. Why we used Ashokan pillar, Ashokan stamp as our national emblem. So when you understand the larger picture, you try to relate it to what is happening. Then you try to pick up the important pillars. Pillars in terms of not events, as I said, the political aspects, economic aspects, social aspect. Once you have created a skeleton, then you can fill up with the smaller information as and when required.
Right.
So try to create a bigger picture. It is more like a story or you can say a script, a movie. If you are a director, and I always say students that, okay, you want to memorize, you want to revise a chapter, I would not say memorize. So you can do it in multiple ways. For example, what I do is that I have a whiteboard in my room, and once I have read any topic, then I prepare my own flow chart.
Right.
That helps me to understand that, okay, these are the sequence of events, how the events are flowing. And then maybe once my flow chart is done, that will always remain in my mind, because long-term memory is very, very important for any optional. I would not say for optional, in this entire preparation, you cannot keep on revising, memorizing, because there is always a forgetfulness curve into it.
Correct.
So create a flow chart, I would not go into mnemonics because there are so many mnemonics that you keep on. Then for remembering mnemonics, you have to prepare. So don't go to that. You can create a flow chart. You can make a quasi pictographic thing. Highlight the keywords, important historical opinion. Make a summarized. I would not say note, but a crisp summary at the end of every chapter. Keep revising that. Look at that. Try to recall. Okay, this is what हो जाएगा. It is not that difficult.
राइट सर अभी जब हम बात कर रहे थे हमने स्टार्ट किया था और हम यहाँ पे आंसर राइटिंग का हमने एक डिस्कशन किया
Yeah.
उससे पहले हम ये भी बात कर रहे थे कि कैसे फैक्ट्स समझने हैं और कंटेंट बट यहाँ पर अ लॉट ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स दे वांट टू डू इट बाय सेल्फ स्टडी also. So is it possible for history optional? And when we are discussing this, what is the role of test series and mentorship? Because this is something that has also emerged as an option. And what kind of role it can play, that needs to be told to them so that they have a clarity on what they need and what they don't. So that students can make a informed decision on this. So first, self-study, is that possible? Second, role of test series and mentorship, especially in optionals.
Self-study is definitely possible. But again, when you go for self-study, you must know which are the sources, one, and stick to that. Also, there has to be a doubt clearing mechanism because
Right.
in any optional, I would not say the narrative part, but once you start preparing, you would go through PYQs. You would not find all the PYQs getting answered from the source you are doing because there is no one book for any optional, or even for history. I cannot say that, okay, if you read this book, then all the PYQs will be addressed. There will always be. And then, so even if you are preparing on a self-study mode, you must first meet a faculty or a mentor, try to list down the sources,
Okay.
and also possibly the timeline. You can ask, there is no fixed timeline, but okay, you ask a mentor, a faculty that, sir, madam, what is the ideal time I should take to cover all these sources? And then at what stage I should start answer writing. And test series and mentorship obviously plays a huge role. Why? In the current scheme of things, even for history optional answer writing, the time is less. The examination time is less. There are 19 questions to be answered effectively. And the scope of creativity is very, very limited. So, a lot of things come from muscle memory. You must know 5, 6 good ways of writing introduction. You must know how to generate points. You must cover all the dimensions and complete the paper on time. So, this cannot happen without a lot of practice.
Right.
So, test series is very, very important. Test series tells you that, okay, you may have good knowledge, but you are not able to translate that knowledge into good answer writing.
Right.
Test series enables you to experiment with new ways of answer writing. You can be creative also. You would know that, okay, if I want to say words, there is a 10 marker question, when to use line diagrams, when to use maps, when to use flow charts, how creative I can be, because at the end of the day, the person who will be evaluating does not know you and you don't have an opportunity to explain. Your language has to be lucid. The person must feel the interest while reading. So all of this is something that I think cannot come on the own. You need a mentor, you need a faculty, whoever.
Right.
And definitely you should write more. This is something that everybody does. You go through all the toppers, or you ask anyone who has cracked this examination, they would emphasize on answer writing more. And with answer writing, you also effectively revise the syllabus.
Right, so. So when we were discussing this again, this when you came up with the answer, another thing just popped in my head that when you were saying that there should be a mechanism to address your doubts or issues as well.
Yes.
So, given the current environment where we have artificial intelligence and so much thing, which aspirants are also, they have the option, but they are also flooded with it. So, what are the right ways do you think that they can use this AI, internet, and a lot of things to their advantage?
First of all, a lot of responses which are given by AI, ChatGPT, Grok, Perplexity, or Gemini, is based on the LLM that already has a reservoir of these questions or similar content. The yes, after a point, the ChatGPT or the AI also understands that this is the line of questions that you are going to ask. But the problem is that that many times they give a very detailed response. So I would say for feedback, AI is not good. But for searching for new information, AI is good because unlike Google, where you have to go through and read pages, AI is pretty good. So AI can be can be used to prepare PYQs at times. For example, you don't know on any topic,
Right.
the development of Sanskrit in Mughal times.
Right.
Now, instead of going through IGNOU notes, you can ask AI, but you have to give very specific prompts. And there is a disclaimer that sometimes the AI responses are factually wrong also. I have seen it personally. So you must be aware of that. You must not completely rely on that. I have personally seen that it has been quoting wrong authors of the books which have not been written by them. But yes, AI helps. It helps to get responses to certain information in a very structured manner, but not for feedback AI.
Okay. Noted. Sir, when we are discussing that students should use test series to understand that where they are going wrong and putting then their concepts, across your decade of experience, you must have come across numerous copies, test copies,
Yes.
right? So, do you think there is a distinct pattern that you see of a top scorer? And what is that pattern? If you had to label like 5 things that the toppers are doing in answer writing, in their answers which are visible, what are those 5 things?
First is that a good student or a successful student, after a point, starts understanding the demand of the question.
Correct.
Generally, a person who is a beginner starts writing what one knows, not what has been asked.
Right.
And that's a problem. You feel that you have done exceptionally well, but the marks turn out to be low. And
Right.
because you have written something that was not asked, or maybe you have written more than what was asked. So, one thing is this. Second, toppers or successful students, they know how to restrict information in minimum number of words. So they start covering more with less. That is something that comes with practice.
Right.
So initially, with every student, with foundation students also, when we give them questions to write, they will write 3-4 pages. And when I ask them that, okay, what is this? It is more like your summary, whatever you read in the class. So eventually, when you start practicing, you get feedback, you will understand that, okay, everything that I know needs not to be written. You have to write in a very crisp manner. Third thing that toppers or successful candidates are very good at is that they are creative. They know that even the evaluator who is checking on an average 20 papers a day will get bored by reading the same content. So I must present things in a more interesting way, in a creative way. They know where to use historians pretty well. So they are not too obsessed, but they know to use them very creative way. And then one part that the toppers prepare very well is the introduction and conclusion. Generally, this is a Achilles heel for many students. They just write something and they want to jump to the body, because according to them, the body means the main content
Right.
is most important, but not the introduction and the conclusion. In fact, this year also, one of our student, Diksha, where I was interacting, she told that she had worked extensively on her introduction. When she was a part of our program, initially she had a pattern of answer writing,
Right.
of introduction, which was good but monotonous. And then
Okay.
I had a discussion that you have to come up with new ways. You have to write reflective introduction. You have to write persuasive introduction. You have to write argumentative introduction, and then interpretative also. So there are multiple types of ways introduction. What is a good conclusion? Because generally students just want to write something and go to the next.
Right.
This is something that is not good, because uh, answer writing is more like a conversation that you're happening with the evaluator. It's just that you are not present. Through your answer, you are communicating the
Right.
person has asked. So you have to conclude it in a proper way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir, for telling us like how it can be rounded up. And at least this puts us like tells the student that this is the goal. These are the 5 things, or things in general they should be moving towards across the time. Another information that I would want for the larger audience here is, when you were talking about sources, is there is a minimal effective book list that they should definitely do that you would like to like bring it for them, that if you have covered this, you are good to go?
I would say that before you go to the standard books,
Okay.
you should necessarily read the old NCRTs of class 11, 12. I would not recommend reading from class 6 to 12.
Okay.
But class 11, 12, everyone. In fact, not only the GS, but even for optional students,
Right.
we recommend that whether you do self-study, you have joined a program, you must first read the 4 NCRTs that will give you a good understanding of what this entire syllabus is about. Now, coming to the standard books, yes, on our website also we have a detailed list. But then with these standard books, you have to be selective. You don't have to read these books cover to cover. For example, in medieval India, we have a book by Satish Chandra. Now, the book is more inclined in the political way. So, you don't have to go into that political dimension too much.
Right.
You must understand it and then move to the administrative, cultural aspect. So, with the books also there is a catch that if you do not know what to leave out, then you end up reading unnecessary stuff. So, if you are following standard books, as I said, you must get it marked with the mentor faculty if you are on a self-study. Otherwise, for classroom students, they get the hand-holding support. In fact, in many cases, they don't read also standard books because the time is less. The class notes are so exhaustive and thorough that apart from NCRT, the class notes are sufficient. So, that is how it is done nowadays mostly.
So this was very informative and insightful, the whole conversation. So to end it on a lighter note, we will be moving towards a rapid fire round, very small one.
Okay.
I'll be firing up very basic, simple, easy questions. We would expect shorter answers. One book any aspirant shouldn't ignore. It could be related to subject or otherwise also.
NCRTs, I would say.
Okay. One topics usually students underestimate in history optional.
Topic in history optional, people underestimate, I think, the cultural themes in paper 1. And in paper 2, they underestimate the micro themes. There are a number of micro themes. People largely focus on the revolutions, world wars, but they tend to ignore the minor themes such as the 19th century revolutions. I made it big, but these are the
Ancient versus modern, which is tougher?
Ancient, certainly. Why? Because the mapping part. Modern, we consume a lot of modern Indian history on a daily basis also. In the current political narrative, everywhere we discuss about our freedom fighters.
Right.
So even for a layman, their awareness of modern Indian history is more.
What matters more, notes or PYQs, or both?
Both.
Both together in the form.
Yes, yes.
Okay, one last one. One word for history optional.
Opinion.
Very nice. Very fresh and new take with history. But thank you so much, sir. It was a delight to have you.
Thank you so much.
I got to know so much about history optional, and also surely the students who are hearing us, they got a lot of information to at least make an informed decision around it and have a clarity, especially without any labels, without any noise and perception around the optional. So thank you so much for your time. It was an amazing session with us.
Thanks so much. Yes. Yes.